So, Krista, thank you for coming over to see us today. And you're probably intrigued as to why I wanted to interview you.
Yes.
It's no great fandangled reason. I'm genuinely interested and curious about your journey. And some of the other people that we've talked to, from a journey point of view, it's been really more for some of the next generation to look at the journey of that some of us have taken, because I think often for the young people coming through, they only see the end result. They don't see what we've been through. They don't see how our careers have zigzagged left, right and centre to then arrive where we are. And I'm genuinely intrigued to understand your background and why you were attracted to MYTIME and why you've ended up being in the position that you're in. So I think a really nice starting point would be to basically tell the audience what MYTIME is all about.
Okay, so I'm Krista Sharp. I am the CEO of a charity called MYTIME Young Carers, and the charity's been going since about 2013, but it was really, really small, and it was all based around a building that we own out in the Purbex in Worth Matravers. And young carers used to go there to take a break from their caring responsibility. And so young carers, just to sort of make it really clear who they are and what they do, they are basically children age 5 up to age 18 who care for someone in their family. So it might be that they're caring for a parent. In some cases, we've got children that are caring for both parents. It could be that they're caring for a brother or a sister or even a grandparent that they live with. And they are incredible, incredible young people, but they have a huge weight of responsibility. And with that, lots and lots of pressures. And MYTIME essentially exists to support those young carers and their families. And we do that in a number of different ways. So the first way that kind of really directly benefits the young people is that we run a Making Memories programme. So that's to give them a break from their caring. So we've had a group of young carers today out paddleboarding in Poole Harbour, and we run an online youth group that they come to on a weekly basis. We have 100 children that come each week. And the reason we run it online is actually for those young carers, leaving their home and leaving the person they care for can be really difficult. And they might not have a parent that can drive them to a club or to a sport that they want to take part in. So we do provide laptops and we do provide kind of training on how to access Zoom, but we send them resources. So this week we've had a whole group of young carers making Jubilee biscuits. And then next week I think we've been collecting all sorts of bric-a-brac in the office. I think they're making models of the Queen or all sorts. But the idea really is then to bring them together and to help them to understand that they're not the only young person that is in that situation. There are others like them. And that community and that support that they get from one another is really important. And then we have 2 other programmes, one which really fits with what you started talking about, which is our employability programme. And that we work with 16 to 25-year-old young carers, because when I first started at MYTIME, I read a big piece of research that 49% of young adult carers, aged 16 to 25, were NEET, so not in education, training or employment. And now that makes no sense. These young people they're exceptional. They're incredibly empathetic. They are utterly selfless, often exceptionally organised. They have skills that other young people their age don't. But there are obviously some really big barriers for them in getting into the next stage, like transitioning from school to college to university and to work. And we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. And it's really troubling. How do you go to university and leave behind the person that you care for? And then the last programme that we run is called Level Up. And my background is in education, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But that is helping to train teachers to identify and then support young carers. Because I taught for 13 years. I was Leicestershire, I taught in inner city London, I taught in Bournemouth, and nobody ever spoke to me about young carers. I never knew that there was this set of young people in my class that had all of this stuff going on at home. And so as a teacher, I would have inadvertently made their lives more difficult. You know, you haven't handed your homework in, here's your detention. You're late for school, but I was dropping my brother and sister off. Doesn't matter, you were late for school. Because I was an assistant principal, it was my job to uphold the rules of the school. And so that programme is really important, because that helps those young people in the way that I think as teachers, sometimes we really don't remember what is going on for those kids. We have our own priorities, get them through this set of exams, get them to this point. And so the whole point of that programme is to upskill the people that see them every day so that they can pick up on, hang on, I think Chris is having a bad day today. He might need a little bit more, or give that flexibility when it's needed.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. God, blimey, that's a lot more than I perceived it did. I think for me the troubling element is how they're enabled, and I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but I remember when I left home through education, and for me very much it was an escape mechanism, and of course, you know, I'm not using the same term for them, but how they make that jump to become free, to get on with their life, because there comes a point where they need their own life. I mean, I don't know how does that mechanism even work?
In some cases it doesn't. The one thing I would say is that young carers and their families are often exceptionally close, and that's because they operate as a unit, they operate as a family. We spoke with actually a young carer's parent yesterday, and she said, if one of us is down, the other three are there to pick them up. And so they are exceptionally tight. But what it can mean is that they don't necessarily have their own individual hopes and dreams and ambitions.
They've sacrificed it all.
Because they've sacrificed it, but also because they think as part of a family unit rather than thinking about themselves. So we've got a number of young carers at the moment who want to go to university, but they genuinely don't know how to go. And it's quite frustrating on our part in that we run this employability program with them, we fire them up about all the things that they can be, help them to see what skills they've developed as young carers. Yeah. But when it actually comes down to it, who is going to go in and look after mum if I'm living 2 hours away at university?
Yeah.
And like, we've got one young man, and it broke my heart, but he's 17, he gets the bus for an hour every day to go to the grammar school and back again. And I said to him, what do you want to do? What's the plan? And typical teenage lad, he says, well, I don't know. And I was like, I don't believe you, come on, what do you want to do? Well, he actually wants to be a doctor, because he wants to understand how to physically help people that are suffering from the same thing that his mum is. And I said to him, well, that's amazing, you want to study medicine? I can't. What do you mean? Well, they don't offer medicine at Bournemouth University, and I can't leave home. Because if I leave home, then all of the looking after mum falls to my sister, and that wouldn't be fair on her because it's a 2-person job.
Oh, wow.
And so you're heartbroken for him, but also his selflessness is incredibly impressive. But also his mum doesn't know that that's what he wants to do, because he knows it would break her heart if she felt that she was preventing him from moving forward. So it's complex, and the social care system is not really fit to support some of these families. So for some of the families, that the support that they might need would be someone coming in to help with the cooking and with the cleaning, and actually some people's conditions are better at some point, so they need less support, and then they're worse at other times, so they need more support.
Yes.
But the council service isn't really set up to do that. It would come in if they needed personal care, help going in and out of the shower, but it's actually kind of often set up to support much older people that need care. So it's really complex, because we haven't got an answer for those. So
the system needs to change.
100%.
Because failing the system stepping in, I guess the only other option is, I'm involved with the Lewis Manning Hospice, and one of the things they're doing is there was an evening charity event, literally to raise funds for one nurse. And I guess that's obviously potentially a similar route, in that people are personally sponsored and funded to probably try and help 2 or 3 children to be able to go to university.
Yeah.
But that's incredibly tough. So, okay, so I get the MYTIME charity now, and also just rather than wait till the end. I mean, as a charity, what is it that you would want from the business community? What is it that you're after amongst the list of probably a million things? What really makes the difference?
I mean, obviously the immediate answer is funding. It always is, because in truth, we understand the needs, or we work really hard to understand the needs of the families, and we can be quite responsive in that, we met as a team this morning to talk about the fact that the cost of living crisis is coming. And for some of our families, it's going to be absolutely devastating. And we know that because we have really good relationships with those families, they're probably going to reach out to ask us for help. So what we're going to do is compile a list of all the local organisations that do help with food or help with emergency funding, because that's not really what we do.
Yeah.
But funding to run those programmes that I spoke about is key. But the second thing really is, I think, local businesses and lots of businesses could perhaps kind of upskill themselves about employing young carers and about the kind of flexibility that they might need. And actually, I think before COVID, it was quite hard because the way we worked was quite rigid. It was, you're here from this time to this time and that's when you work.
Yes.
Whereas in a way, COVID's kind of given me a little bit of hope in that businesses have become more flexible, which is actually what a lot of young carers need.
Yeah.
They need to know that if mum's having a bad morning and she hasn't got out of bed, that they've got the space to be able to take their younger siblings to school, but they can catch up on their work later.
Yes.
So the other thing that we always look for as well is through the employability programme, each of the young carers gets a mentor session with somebody in the industry that they're interested in.
Yes.
So we're always looking for people that have got business experience or work experience to kind of share their history, their story.
Yeah.
But there's a lot we can do. So I think it's funding is the obvious answer, but actually creating a community whereby disability is better understood, therefore the understanding of what a carer actually needs to do to provide that support, that would be a huge step forward.
Right, okay. Okay, well, I think that was very loud and clear. And obviously anyone who wants to get involved and find out more can contact you. You're on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And you're easily contactable. So if we wind back to, I always like starting at the beginning because I know what I end up doing now isn't what I thought I'd ever end up doing. When you were at school, in your final years, did you know what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I love working with young people.
Okay.
I love it. And they make me laugh and I think they are incredible. As I say, I've worked in inner city London, I've worked up in Leicestershire, I've worked down in Bournemouth, and I love it. I love working with kids.
Okay.
But my dad was a teacher, and when I told him that I was going to train to be a teacher, he wrote me a 10-page double-sided letter to tell me not to do it.
Wow.
Because he'd been teaching in the game for a long time and had seen it change, and he felt that the freedoms that teachers used to have were becoming more and more restricted. And knowing who I was back then, he thought I'd rally against some of those restrictions.
You just become frustrated.
And become frustrated. And in truth, that is what happened. And it took 13 years to get to that point. So I taught for 13 years first. But what had happened was that I am the eccentric teacher. And schools used to be full of eccentric teachers that taught things the way they think things should be taught.
They were what we call the cool teachers.
Exactly, it was fun.
Yeah.
I used to teach geography, and for some of my groups, the best way to help them understand how a river worked was to build a river in the classroom.
Yeah.
And the head would come in and would have all sorts of things going on, and he's looking around like, what is happening in here? But I always got really good results. The kids always did really well. They enjoyed the subject. They loved it. And I had a really good uptake at A-level, which was really reassuring. And then over time, it just became more and more about numbers on pieces of paper. And what was starting to happen was that all teachers were being encouraged to teach the same way. And I used to train other teachers to teach. That was part of what I did. And I felt like I was killing some of that creativity.
Yeah.
And for me, it stopped being fun.
Yeah.
When we were giving out knowledge organisers to Year 7, which is a way of kind of teaching the kids by rote all of the basic knowledge they need to learn, there became less and less space to discuss, to problem solve, and geography was such a beautiful subject for that. You know, should we build this?
A-level.
Oh, well, there you go.
It. Yeah.
Yeah, should you put this wind farm in A or B or C? Have a discussion. It was just so fun, and then, yeah, as I say, I stopped loving it.
Wow.
And I felt like I cared more about what the kids' exam results were than I did about them as people.
Okay.
And that's where MYTIME is amazing.
Right.
Because I do still care how they get on in their exams, but I have so much more scope now to think about the whole person.
Yeah. So you went straight from teaching to MYTIME?
So I did 1 year of doing both.
Okay.
During COVID. So I taught 2 days a week, and then I online mostly, or I was in school with the kids that were on the key workers, young children. And then I did My Time 3 days a week. And when I started, there were 3 of us. So it was a really, really small team.
Yeah.
And we just, the need throughout COVID was just enormous, because for young carers, often they will describe school as their break. It's a sanctuary. It's an opportunity to take some time out from that caring role. And they didn't have that anymore. But also they had the heightened stress of knowing there is this virus, and lots of their parents and the people they cared for are on the vulnerable list.
Yes.
So it was incredibly stressful for them. And so we had to evolve. We had to evolve what we did. And then the more work we've done, the more and more young carers we find. And it doesn't stop. It isn't going to.
Wow. So who started My Time?
So it was actually founded in 2013 by Matthew Barker.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, Matt. I think... Yeah, I do. I didn't know he started it. Because when we were in our old place, I remember coming across it because we used to open up on Saturdays, and we used to have some like gaming units where we'd encourage kids who maybe couldn't afford them or whatever to come and play them for free on a Saturday. And I remember talking to him about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I know some kids who would love that," but he's so reserved. He didn't sort of come out with the whole thing. Right, got you. So Matt started it.
The charity used to be called the Paul and Dorset Adventure Centre, and as I said,
Okay.
it was all based around this building out in the Purbex.
Right.
And back in 1987, which I think is when it was originally founded, it was for groups of young people to come and enjoy the outdoors. That was the idea. And then I think things got tough during the 90s and in 2000 because adventure centres, the laws changed and there was a lot of legislation put in place.
Health and safety.
Health and safety.
Not allowed to climb.
Exactly.
Not allowed to run.
All sorts of things.
No swimming. No jumping.
Don't join yourself.
Walk, don't run.
Yeah. And so I think by about 2013, they kind of had to make a decision about, was the charity going to carry on? And if it was, what was it going to do?
Yeah.
And the last group of young people that had come and used and stayed at the centre was a group of young carers from Poole.
Right.
So Matt met with a lady called Maggie Harris, who is an absolute hero in the world of young carers. She's incredible. And spoke to her about, well, who are young carers? What do they do? Why did you bring them? And I think he was just really moved hearing that there was this group of young people that did all these amazing things. So that was when My Time was born.
Wow, that's incredible. The thing is, Matt does all this stuff, and he just quietly gets on with it. And he's been doing it for so long as well. I mean, it's quite incredible. You forget, to be honest, you forget how old he is. I mean, he doesn't look his age, but when you hear all the stuff he's done, you realise he's really ancient. So, you do masses for the young carers, and I love just the idea of you filling that niche and the charity that Matt started. I think it's awesome. But you personally, other than seeing the young kids with smiles on their faces, how do you recharge? Because it's got to be quite intensive. Because it's not like you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then great, tick.
It's fixed. It's never fixed.
It's a constant thing.
Yeah.
So how do you recharge and keep the whole motivation going?
So the motivation is always there.
Right.
But the level of tiredness that I feel it varies. But I think we get so many, there's kind of two motivations. You get the wins, the stories where it has worked out really well and something you've done has made a huge difference to a young person.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. So I interviewed one of our young carers yesterday, and when I think about the boy that I met 2 years ago to the young man that I sat and interviewed yesterday, the difference in him is incredible. And he's been involved with all of the things that we offer. He's done the employability programme, he's been involved in Making Memories, he's part of a project we're running with another charity called Stormbreak. And he sat and he spoke so eloquently about the experiences of young carers, what he wished his teachers knew. And I said to him at the end, I was like,
wow.
Where did that come from? He said, I'm done being quiet now, Krista. And I was like, it's amazing.
Wow.
And he basically had said, like, his experience as a young person before My Time came into his world wasn't great. And what he wanted to do was play his part in making sure that for his younger sister and the younger young carers, they have a better level of support moving forward. So So those days, you know you're winning. That's when life is amazing.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then there's the other days where you get really frustrated because the system is broken or something happens. You know, we had one young carer and she'd been going to see a counsellor in school and then being taken from her counselling straight into a lesson at school. And the teacher kept then sending her to isolation because she was late and because she was distracted when she came in. So then that puts fire in your belly to then want to kind of stop that thing from happening. So yeah, but it's their stories, it's them that they make the difference. And you know, I try and manage the team really carefully because it is really emotional and it can be really demanding at times. And over Christmas we have a proper shutdown and everyone takes a proper break, and I really think about their well-being and I listen to what they're saying, and that's really important because we're only as strong as our team, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But it is, when you get the wins, it's amazing.
Wow, I'm completely blown away. you totally smashed that, and I can't imagine anyone watching this back and not feeling the passion and actually the difference that we can potentially make. So, as I said before, reach out to Krista if you think you can help or just want to know more, because every little helps, and it's an amazing cause. So thank you so much for coming over to see us today.
My pleasure.
It's absolutely wonderful, and honestly, the stuff you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.